Good evening. We're going to continue with lesson 7. I can model mixed numbers with units of hundredths, then ones, tenths, and hundredths in expanded form on the place value chart. So we're going back to that place value chart that we did in the beginning of the year. And we're going into the hundredths this time too, and then going into the hundredths. So we could see a number that looks something like this: 427 and 5 hundredths. Pretty big. All right, let's get started. All right, so we have 42.818. So it's 42 and 18 hundredths. And if you look on the bottom, you see our place value chart. We have the hundredths. This side, the left of the decimal, is considered the whole number. Anything to the right of the number is more of the fractional part, the decimal part. So we have the hundredths, tens, ones, then we go to the tenths and the hundredths. Without the ones being in here, you see how the tenths and the tens, very similar. Hundredths, hundredths. So what we're going to use is these little place value discs and represent 42 and 18 hundredths. So let's take out our place value discs and represent the 4, which would be 40. So how many tens do we have? Well, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 tens, 4 copies of tens. How many copies of 1 do we have? Well, we have 2. So that is, oops, it's 1. Okay, sorry about that. We got 1 copy. And here's our, whoa. Here's our second copy. So we have 2 copies. How many tenths do we have? Well, we just have 1 tenth. And now how many hundredths do we have? Well, we have 8 copies of the hundredths. So we have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 copies of hundredths. So how is this all going to look? If we were to write this out in like an expanded form, we would have to say, how many copies of tens do we have? We have 4 copies of tens. So that would look like 4 copies of 10 plus 2 copies of 1 plus, how many tenths do we have? Well, we just have 1 copy of a tenth, and then we have 8 copies of 100th. So that's how it would look like as a decimal form, but expanded form. What would it look like as a fraction form? Well, our whole number is going to look very similar. We're going to say 4 copies of 10, which would be give us 40. 2 copies of 1 plus 1 copy of 1 tenth plus 8 copies of 100th. And that's how our expanded form would look. All right, I'm going to write a decimal number sentence to identify the total of the place value discs. All right, so 3 tens. Well, that's basically, again, what we've been doing. We have 3 copies of 10, which would give us 30. We have 4 copies of a tenth, which would give us 4 tenths, plus we've got 2 copies of 100ths, which would look like this, 0.02. And if we added all that up together, what would we get? we would get 30 and 42 hundredths. All right, we have 4 hundredths, so we have 4 copies of 100, plus we have 3 copies of 100th. So how would this look like? Well, this would be and this one would be 400 plus, there's no tenths, 0.03, because the 3 is in the hundredths place and there are no tenths. So this would look like 40 and 3 hundredths. By the way, guys, just wanted to let you know that we would have to cross this. There was an extra 100 in there. We were just going to focus on the 4 hundredths. All right, now we have a place value chart with the hundreds, the tens, the ones, the tenths, and the hundredths. So now they want us to look at the digit blank is in the hundredths place, and what's the value of it? Well, in the hundredths place, it's right here, hundreds, and there's a 3. So it would be 3, it's in the hundreds place, and the value of it is 300, or we could say in unit form 3 hundreds. The next one is asking the digits in the tens place, and that would be a 4, and the value of that is a 40, or we could say in unit form 4 tens. The digits in the tenths place, there's just 1 digit in the tenths place, and the value of that is 0.1, or we could say 1/10. And in the hundreds place, we've got a 9 is in the hundreds. Now what's the value of that? Well, in the hundreds place, 0.09, because 9 is in the hundreds, or we could say 9 hundredths, or unit form 9 hundredths. All right, now we're going to take the decimal and fraction form, and 25 and 3/10 is equivalent to what? Fraction, or we say mixed number. And we could say, whoops, "25 and 3/10, because the 3 is in the tenths place. But now we actually have to do this in a fraction notation, okay, by breaking this number up. So how many tens do we have? Well, we have 2 tens. So we have 2 copies of 10 plus 5 copies of 1 plus 3 copies of 1/10, which would give us 20 plus 5 plus 3/10, which would ultimately give us 25 and 3/10. But what happens if we did now decimal? Well, our whole number would stay the same. So we have 2 copies of 10 plus 5 copies of 1 plus 3 copies of 1/10, which is 0.3. So if we add this all up, 20 plus 5 plus 3/10 would give us 25 and 3/10. Another adorable meme. Now get out there and give it your best shot. All right, I want to see your fraction notation and your decimal notations tomorrow. Give me the fraction for 39 and 39.07. I don't want to actually say it because then I'll basically giving you the answer. But I want to see all the notations tomorrow. Please give me the fraction for 39.07. Give me the decimal and the fraction for 6 hundredths plus 2 tenths plus 6 hundredths. Give me the decimal and the fraction for 5 tens plus 2 hundredths. We knew you could do it. Have a great night.